This is David Crowell, back to you for the second part of Money Matters. And I'm continuing my explanation of, with a little bit of diatribe mixed in, my explanation of tariffs and the role that they play. There are two other quick points that I wanted to make about this tariff discussion. You will not see it broadly discussed in the news, even though it is perhaps as important as the negotiations with North Korea, for example. The tariffs are right up there in both national and international significance. Way, 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 way more important than Stormy Daniels and countless other topics that are important but are minor league. Why are the tariffs so important? Because the whole theoretical basis of winners and losers in a tariff situation is very complex. Tariffs are loaded with unintended consequences. Tariffs, specific narrow tariffs like the one that's been imposed by Trump on steel imports and aluminum imports, are narrow and specific. They're a surgical strike as intended by Mr. Trump. The problem is that frequently such tariffs lead directly to something called a trade war. A trade war is a response by the other producing nations, the nations that are producing steel. Their steel producers lobby their governments and say, look, the United States is out of line here, singling us out and trying to crush us with their steel tariff. We need you to respond with tariffs on U.S. goods. Trade war breaks the boundaries of steel on steel and suddenly opens up any import or export to either of the countries, opens them up for tariff, for the imposition of tariffs. So you can suddenly find that Californian fruit exports, grape exports, are cut off or are tariffed. That fish exports to Japan are cut off. That beef exports around the world from Texas are cut off. Not cut off, but that tariffs are imposed by other nations, which raises the price, which means that less goods can be sold. So this has a spiraling effect very, very swiftly. There's existential threat to the industries involved. In other words, the industries involved really look their life and existence in the eye when a tariff is imposed, because business can be dramatically increased or decreased instantaneously. Panic sets in, more tariffs get imposed, and a trade war ensues. And in trade wars, then comes the question of who's the winners and who are the losers. Here's the general statement from economics. This is not economics 101. This is sort of economics 303. There are no real winners in a trade war, because market disruption and the disturbance of existing productive capacity happens on both sides. So you're basically, trade war is like putting a sniper in a tree in here and a opposing sniper in a tree there. He takes a shot, he takes a shot, he takes a shot, he takes a shot. Well, somebody dies every time they take a shot. So there's that aspect of a trade war in which there's automatic and immediate damage on both sides. Then there's another aspect, and that is, generally speaking, if the trade war is between unequal adversaries, the United States versus Brazil, or the United States versus Germany, or the United States versus Nigeria, or whatever, then the United States is going to win, because the stronger of the two parties to a trade war wins. Not without damage. There's damage to both sides, but the stronger party wins. There was a famous trade war at the turn of the century between France and Italy. Italy imposed a tariff on certain French imports. France retaliated. Italy, being the weaker of the two countries at that time, pretty immediately, within 6 months to a year, gave up and said, "Uncle," and the French were sufficiently angry about the fact that the trade war had been started in the first place. They were sufficiently angry, they continued it on for 4 years. Italy suffered terrible consequences, a demolished economy, widespread food shortages and starvation, all due to a trade war. So the trade wars do not have a good reputation. The stronger person wins. In our current context, in the context of the world economy as we have it today, the response to this steel tariff and the response to the aluminum tariff has global competitors who are equal to the United States. The European Union as a whole will make the response to the tariffs. China, as an economic near equal of the United States, will make the response to the U.S. tariffs. The U.S. tariffs will not, the Trump tariffs will not go quietly. They will not be imposed quietly. They will not simply sit there protecting our steel industry with no response from the European Union or Canada. There is already an immediate response politically, but instrumentally, meaning in practical terms, the response will come very quickly. Now, the Trump administration is starting to backpedal on this a bit with something called cutouts. In other words, it really looks good on the stage to say, we're putting a 25% steel tariff in place. What the cutout is behind the scenes, you say, but we don't mean you, Canada, and we don't mean you, Mexico, and we don't mean you, and we don't mean you, and we don't mean you, we don't mean you. Well, who exactly do you mean, and what exactly is the purpose of all of this? And at the end of the day, what does it achieve? Very, very dangerous economic policy. Last point about tariffs is we have a full employment economy that is continuing to grow. We're in our eight and a half, headed toward 9 years of continuous growth. We are precipitously near a tipping point where the slightest increases in inflation and the slightest tightening of the job market and any disruption of productive capacity could accidentally throw us into recession. We have a tax cut that is propelling a huge stimulus of money into our economy, precisely at a time when the economy is already not super hot but very warm. So we've got this growing warm economy, we've got a big stimulus of money from the tax cut, which is inflationary. And now we have a tariff which is inflationary. It's a very dangerous mix of elements And it's going to be extremely interesting for us to watch this. At least it's extremely interesting to me. Not everybody gets excited about the same things, I understand, but it's interesting to me, and will be interesting to watch closely in the coming weeks. My prediction is that the tariffs will get greatly watered down before they're actually implemented. This is DCrowell for Money Matters.